right.
We're back.
We're back. And today we're talking about the All or Nothing Marriage by Eli J. Finkel. How the best marriages work. You want to take a first swing?
This book was very science heavy, but I did enjoy that it gave me the history, a brief history of marriage.
Yeah.
And how marriages started out as a pragmatic business style arrangement for most families, and then evolved into the love-based marriage, which I would say that's what we both can see our parents had, a love-based marriage, not a pragmatic marriage.
Right.
And then evolved into the
self-fulfillment based marriage?
I don't remember. I that's why I left it to you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I could tell. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, and I really thought that was interesting because, from love to self-expression. Self-expression based marriage.
Self-expression based marriage.
So the I liked that because there are still all three types of marriages present,
100%.
alive and well, all around the world.
Definitely.
America, so the book kind of framed it from a perspective of the history of marriage in America. So it started kind of with American Revolution and then moved forward from there. And it was interesting to me how the evolution of marriage historically in the United States kind of mirrors the evolution of a lot of marriages even within America now, through where he later talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and how that sort of relates to marriages and how pressures from outside of the marriage can affect essentially the bandwidth available for the marriage to work on other stuff.
Well, and in the self-expressive era, right? Like we're all trying to get to the top of the pyramid, essentially, right? And or the mountain. And I loved how the framing, and the messaging about nobody lives at the top of the mountain, right? And so in the cycle of life, there will be times where you summit the mountain and are at the peak, but then you do come back down and you rejuvenate and find solid footing again, and then you try to scale a new mountain. And so I really liked that perspective. It was good, messaging for me, especially in reflecting on our own marriage about the, mountains we've had to climb in the past or we have climbed in the past. And then even just, recognizing that we needed time and space to plateau a little bit so that we could, recognize what was needed and kind of just enjoy where we were at before trying to embark on something new.
100%. And that's, if you take nothing away from this video, I would love for you to read the book because it really is a great book. We'll talk about why you might not want to read the book in a minute, but if it turns out to be the kind of book that's for you, I strongly encourage you to read it. But if you take nothing else from this video, be reassured in the fact that the, I guess, sort of paradigm of marriage that we have now, on paper, it really doesn't actually work all the time, no matter how amazing you are. You cannot stay there. That's why I loved that analogy so much, because we love hiking, we love mountains, I wouldn't say we rock climb by any means, but we really love hiking to the tops of mountains and wherever that's possible. And no one lives at the very top of a mountain. It's exposed to the elements. It's windy. It's it's a terrible place to be long term. But there's no better view than that place. So it's worth going to as often as you can stomach getting up there. But it's a lot of work. It's not easy to do. And it's even harder to sustain. So, you look at some of the wealthiest communities in America and they're where? Not at the top of a mountain. They're near the base of mountains where it's really easy to go summit anytime you want to, right? That's what it means to have made it. And that's kind of how marriages are, I think. And we've been really blessed to have an unbelievably strong, healthy marriage for most of our lives together. But that's because I think we sort of instinctually, I guess, fell into that. That was sort of the way we were doing things as a result of some of the other stuff we had read.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever viewed it from that perspective, but
I think we understood that a solid foundation was necessary. And so we put in a lot of work to understand the other person and accept where they were in that time. And we continue to do that. We continue to work on accepting each other for who we are and recognizing that if change is needed, it's change within us, right? And I think that has helped us in our home life, recognizing where we are and that, so that we can continue to have a solid foundation and recognize when someone's struggling, right? Like understanding who you are and what your basic tendencies are. If I see that you're not doing those, it's like a red flag or a yellow flag for me to be able to say, hey, are you okay? Do you need help?
I see.
Do you need,
Gotcha.
So I think, but that started with us accepting and laying a foundation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as far as going up and down the mountain goes, working on your relationship is one of those things that we all sort of know we should do. It's like exercising or eating healthy. Like, yeah, we know we should, and we probably try when we think about it, right? but just like exercising, it can be exhausting. It's a lot of work. There's a reason everybody isn't doing it all the time. So it's really important to be honest with yourself and give yourself grace and forgiveness, and one another grace and forgiveness, understanding that this is work. There's actually another book that we're going to review later in this series that was the only that did not finish from our year, and we're going to finish it. We are going to keep ducking back to it and doing it little bits at a time, but it was just so much emotional, heavy processing for us as people that it was very difficult for us to get through it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like some stuff is just going to be too difficult to work through at the time. What matters is that you understand it needs to be worked through. You see that it's
trying.
there, and you're
trying.
patient enough to know, look, I'm going to come back to it. I keep coming back to it, and you keep coming back to it until it's resolved. But you have to give yourself those times of like just chilling, just enjoying the moment, living in the time that you've worked towards. Because if you're just constantly pushing up the mountain, I mean, eventually you die of exposure.
And if you're on a plateau, I think it's important to recognize when it's time to like start up the mountain again.
Yeah.
Right? Like
what's the difference between resting and stagnation?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think the other aspect of that I really appreciated about the way he approached the sort of I guess what it takes to prioritize, the emotional bandwidth to prioritize. He also kind of addressed that like a relationship is not just made up of how you treat each other. It's also made up of who each of you independently is and how you feel about that. And so there are times in a relationship where, you may both be theoretically doing everything right on paper, but if one of you is just not okay outside of the relationship, having nothing to do with the relationship, and neither of you are addressing that in any way, there's only so much further up that mountain you can go at the time. You're essentially trying to do that hike with a sprained ankle. You need to heal first, and then start working on hiking some more.
Yeah.
What else did we get from that book? So we had the evolution of marriage. It started out, based on we need land and food to survive. And then it moved on to, wouldn't it be nice if we liked being around each other, though?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Now it's more about, wouldn't it be nice if we liked ourselves?
Yes. Yeah.
So what else past that? Oh, so we had some tools for actually doing that.
Yeah. Love hacking, he calls it. I mean, that's modern languaging, I guess, right?
So what do we mean by a love hack?
Yeah.
Why do we call it that?
Why do we call it that? Because there's simple little tricks and tips to help you in the moment that don't take long, right? And the energy expenditure for a love hack is generally very low.
So So love hacks generally revolve around reframing the way that you're looking at something that already is, putting forth just a tiny concerted focused effort in one little area to help sort of unlock and open up and unblock things. So one of the suggestions that I really liked was reframing memories or reframing conflict.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know for myself when I argue with anyone, it's very easy for me to see my point of view and understand why I'm right or I've been wronged in this situation or whatever it is. Then it's very difficult to put myself in that other person's shoes because usually I don't feel like they're putting themselves in my shoes. And even if I could put myself in their shoes, it feels unfair to be the bigger person, right?
Especially if you're right.
Yeah, exactly. So taking a step back and looking at past conflicts and trying to have the wherewithal to look for where you were wrong, even if you really feel like you weren't. Look for where the other person, had a right to feel that way, even if you disagree with what their opinion was. And maybe even looking for, how your goals or your perspectives or whatever were maybe not even that far out of alignment. Maybe you were just focused on the wrong thing. But trying to find, at least in the case of a marriage, trying to find that thread of sort of unifying theme of love and respect. There's probably something in there that you can dig back up that actually isn't as terrible as you thought it was at the time. And oftentimes if you leave those memories as is, they get that stamp of badness on the way, into storage. And then you look at storage one day and you see this gigantic area full of bad bins and then one tiny little good box in the corner and you think, oh, my marriage is crap. But if you're constantly reassessing and refiling on a regular basis, you'll often find that you're misfiling a lot of those things. Yeah. They weren't what you thought they were. So that was a pretty good one I liked.
Yeah, communication is key.
What were some other, do you remember any other love hacks? I'm having trouble remembering them off the top of my head.
Reframing memories.
Yeah.
I think that one, acts of kindness was a love hack, right? Like small things that,
right. Filling the love bank, so to speak.
Yeah, filling the love bank. Yep. So I like that one because it's easy to just do a simple thing. And, an easy place for me to point out in our own relationship is chores, right? So if I do something that is normally an act that David takes care of, right? It doesn't take that much extra effort for me to do, whatever it is, whether it's starting the laundry or vacuuming. Those tend to be two things that you like to do around the house.
I like to do around the house. But
or I often see him doing. So, it doesn't take that much effort for me to come along and do something like that. Or I am not the main food provider in our house. I don't like daily cooking. I love cooking, but I prefer it to be a time when I can go in the kitchen and ease into it and take my time. And usually it's for something special occasion. Cooking is what I prefer. And so just taking that off of David's plate, the daily cooking, sometimes I know that he really appreciates it. And it's 20 minutes, right? To cook a dinner. It doesn't take that long. And I can tell he really appreciates it when I step up that way.
And I try to actually show that I really appreciate it. That's the other part that I don't know that Eli really addressed, but it's so unbelievably important when your significant other does some sweet, dumb, simple little gesture to show you that they appreciate you. Please acknowledge it. Wherever your headspace is, it doesn't matter. Just acknowledge it. It's good for you in the long run to acknowledge it. All right. Even if you can't get out of your own selfish headspace at the time. Humans, we're constantly learning, we're constantly adapting, whether we mean to or not, whether we're thinking about it or not. And, how it feels when you do a kind thing for your spouse will influence, whether you mean it to or not, it will influence how you feel about doing those things in the future. And, when you have a household where every little thing that each of you does for the other person is just like, oh, thank you. I can't believe you did that. Oh, you're so sweet. I so appreciate it. It sounds stupid, but that took 5 seconds, and like, you know, your heart melts just a little bit. Gosh, it helps. It really does help. It's so hard to go from that to like furious about some dumb thing.
Oh, that's true.
But it's really easy to go from, I picked up the clothes for so-and-so, even though they weren't my clothes, and you know, they didn't say anything about it, and now they did this irritating thing.
Yeah.
The tone feels different.
A little bit.
The vibe is different when you get there.
Yeah.
So what else did we have there? Now, okay, let's talk about why you might not want to read this book. If you are not a science nerd.
Yeah, if scientific research is not your language, this would be a difficult read.
It would be a tough one for you. We happen to lean more in the you know, I kind of consider that to be like a spectrum. There's like, you know, the people who just want to read and hear something, and they don't want, you know, they don't care about the details. That's why they trusted a professional to write a book about it. And then you have like the people who like, they want to know every minutia of how you came to this conclusion
and why
how it works and how it works under the surface and who paid for it. So if that's the spectrum and this is the super detailed, I fall kind of here, I think, and Barbie falls kind of more here-ish. Yeah. We kind of meet somewhere in the middle usually, but I didn't realize you were that far. Yeah.
I mean, okay, here's the thing. Numbers can be manipulated. We know this. And so when I see a graph or a chart in a book, even if it tells me like how they arrived at this and the science, and in this book, he went into the detail of how every single study was outlined and the participants they used, and it was, you know, spot on for scientific research, right? Like, I felt confident that these studies actually happened and that the people doing them were responsible, right? But when I see the charts on the page, they all look the same. Like, there's a line and it goes like this, whoop, and then there's another line and it might go, whoop, or in the next one, it's like, whoop, down. You know, they look the same. So I just, you know, I can't be way over there because...
I, on the other hand, feel that facts can be manipulated, numbers cannot, and that's what makes numbers really useful when you're trying to examine facts. So I don't mind all that sciencey, nerdy stuff. It was maybe a little heavy even for me, though, because it's not just, they tell you how they accounted for bias and the author, then I would love the detail in this book, but woof. Probably could take it up like one level up from there. I don't know that level of granularity was necessary, but
40 pages of notes on the scientific research.
Citations.
This is the citations. Like, I'm just saying it was overkill.
Yeah.
That's all. It just, for me, overkill.
Felt a bit much, sure.
Yeah.
But again, really actionable advice in there,
100%.
Really useful hands-on tips, like things you can put into play immediately. Right out of the gate. Mm-hmm. So speaking of which, though, I guess maybe let's wrap with some general advice on choosing a book. Yeah. So we've talked about how important reading together has been for our relationship, how it was 100%. Foundational for everything that we did that made our marriage great along the way. Yeah. But I know that a lot of people don't really like reading.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just not as popular as it once was, let's be honest. I personally hate reading by myself. I can sit through a medium long article online. If it's like a lot of scrolling, I start skimming. It's really tough for me to sit through a whole book.
I like reading, on the other hand.
Loves it.
I finished 28 books this past year, and that's low. I like books in every format. So I do audiobooks. I read physical books on, that I can hold in my hand. And I read digital books as well through Kindle and Libby and Hoopla. If it comes from the library, I have the app for it and and use it regularly.
And not me.
Yeah.
I mean, I have read books and, I enjoyed the books that I read, but I over the course of time, I have found that my attention span has just slowly waned. The older I get, the less patient I am to sit through something, it seems like, which is almost counterintuitive. But so what I found, though, is number one, the kind of book matters a lot.
Definitely.
Number two, reading with someone is a completely different experience from reading by yourself.
100%.
Reading by myself feels like a slog. Even if I really like the book, it's often difficult for me to get into it enough that I can sit still for that long, frankly. Reading a chapter a day together out loud is a completely different experience for me. One of the other things, before I forget, again, that I really appreciated about the All or Nothing Marriage was it pointed out the importance of doing new things together.
Oh, yes.
And it literally almost doesn't matter at all what it is. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of any relationship, and so, even if you look at like in situations where spouses cheat, a lot of times that what sort of is pulling them in, what kind of,
oh yeah,
I don't want to say causes that, because that's not the cause.
Yeah.
But one of the allures
Enticing,
that, sort of the appeals that makes that happen to some degree is the newness. It's the excitement of the unknown, and the companionship that comes with exploring something unknown together. Mm-hmm. And in any new relationship, the relationship is that thing. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy. It's, it's not hard to make it feel fresh and exciting, because the relationship itself is the new thing that you're exploring together. As soon as the relationship is no longer new, if you two aren't exploring something else that's new together, it will start to feel like it's less new. It'll feel less fresh. It'll feel more familiar, more comfortable, more routine. Mm-hmm. And, to some degree, there's something amazing and wonderful about that. But when you get to that point in your relationship where you're like, God, the magic is dead, there's a good chance that a lot of that is just your perception based on the fact that there's nothing fresh that the two of you are experiencing together. Yeah. You think about like, in movies and things like that, anytime two people experience some sort of a trauma together or something like that.
They're always brought together.
95% chance they fall in love, right?
Yeah.
It's just a given. Like you just expect it now. And that's because going through things together bonds people together. Mm-hmm. And, arguably the more intense the experience, the more profound that bond can be. So even something as simple as, it may be something like going skydiving. It may be doing something as dumb as, going for a walk in the morning on Saturdays at the mall together. Just whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. But having some sort of a new experience on a regular basis that is actually genuinely new to you requires some sort of learning, adapting, growing, whatever, no matter how minute, and is actually new for both of you. That's the other thing. It can't be one of you teaching the other or opening their world to the other. That oftentimes that doesn't go the way you think it's going to go.
No. Mm-mm.
But to both be able to dip into something new and different and maybe potentially exciting together is so unbelievably good for your marriage. I cannot recommend it highly enough.
I think this tees up the next book a little bit, because even though I don't have it to show you right now, because we loaned it to somebody else, we'll have it in time for our next review. But the Mindful Habits, 25 Practices, something. This is where it is. Mindful Relationship Habits, 25 Practices for Couples to Enhance Intimacy, Nurture Closeness, and Grow a Deeper Connection.
Couldn't remember that?
Oh, I know, right?
Wow.
Yeah, long title. But
good segue. Yeah, a lot of good tips in there.
Well, and
some of which are
some of which were in the other books we read. Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about that then. Yeah. But I remember specifically the one you're talking about, the newness, trying new things.
Well, that's today.
It is.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
But that's today. And what are we next? Is that the one that we're doing next?
We're going to do that one next.
Yep. Yeah. Mindful Relationship Habits.
Yes.
25 to do stuff for people who are within the place.
25 is a lot. I'm just saying, like, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We love you all. We'll talk to you soon.